let some of this information be a teaser for you, and then reach out to us when you're ready for more. Okay? All right, guys, thanks. Let me just go through this update presentation of what's new. And I'm going to review actually too. I think that's so worth it, you know, just to review the whole, you know, CaptureLife workflows and how it works. And I'm just going to use PowerPoint actually instead of even going to dp2. But if you've been a part of the CaptureLife webinars that we've had a couple of so far this year. We started out with workflow number 1. So let's say a prepay scenario where the customer purchased a package plus digital delivery. I mean, that's how you guys have told us that you've always intended to use this online delivery of a digital file and the mobile delivery of the file. You know, CaptureLife gives you both avenues to deliver. Well, you deliver it to the CaptureLife portal, okay? And then either you or your customers, your photographer, releases it to the consumer. But if you're, you know, in a vertical operation, then you could very well be passing off to the CaptureLife portal delivery information and instructions that say, you know, no need for photographer intervention. I'm sending the email address and the cell phone number, the mobile number. So just go ahead and deliver that to the consumer via both avenues, online and mobile, if that's what you want to do. So, you know, we already talked about that workflow. That's primarily it. Again, a prepaid package plus digital delivery, and that digital delivery giving the consumer another way to engage, a way to share, right, with friends and family. It's, you know, push of a button you can share, opposed to, you know, kind of the less than modern day way of doing it with a digital delivery that's attached to an email. You know, this is actually delivering to the consumer within a platform, within an engaging either online or mobile app, a way for the consumer to view the image, share it with friends and family, and then ultimately potentially lead to more print purchases. I'll talk a little bit about your print store options. Well, I'll mention it now. I think it's worthwhile. You know, CaptureLife has their own print store. You guys could participate in a percentage of those sales, but we also know that you want to drive the business back to you, ProLab, to your commerce solution, whether it's whatever you're using. It might be Web Rose, so or Rose Web. So you know, you have options certainly for tying the print store into your commerce solution. And at the end, I'll show you TW's email for any of you that don't have it. If you want to get started with CaptureLife, that's the way to start and get working with CaptureLife first, and then us along the way, and we'll make sure you get set up and are good to go. So then we introduced the green screen workflow, where you could upload a PNG file as part of a prepay scenario, as part of the digital delivery on the background that was purchased. And I'm going to run a little visual of that workflow, you guys, because it kind of covers both. You know, if you add the PNG, the green screen cut image to the mix, you know, you can see really both workflows pretty clearly. One image goes up flattened on the background that was purchased as part of the prepaid package, and optionally another image goes up, a PNG green screen cut image, so that that consumer can have even more digital type engagement with that PNG file, swap out different backgrounds, purchase the digital file on different backgrounds, and have another fun interactive way to engage with their content. And then we've recently added a no-buy scenario. So for those customers, for those end consumers that did not purchase a package, they made no purchase whatsoever, you can still reach out to those clients with a no-buy scenario, basically to connect, to contact, to give them, again, an engaging platform to look at their image in, give them another opportunity to purchase, another opportunity to extend their reach and share it with friends and family, and just broaden that reach with platforms, you know, like CaptureLife. And the reason I'm circling this at the bottom, and one reason I'm really not getting into all the detail in dp2, everything that I just shared with you, whether it's a prepay on the background that was ordered, whether it's that plus a green screen image, whether it's a no buy scenario, you guys, it's all based on the product instructions that you define in your dp2 CaptureLife product. You're sending up to CaptureLife metadata, basically instructions that say do this or don't do this. So the answers to everything that I'm sharing with you lie within the product. Just a quick visual here to show you guys, you know, really literally how it works, visually how it works. You know, images, whether they be green screen images or not, come in from your remote order entry systems, consumed by dp2, and you guys do all the good stuff that you do in dp2. That's why the integration is pretty cool here. You guys were using CaptureLife before dp2, but now in lieu of the integration with dp2, you get to deliver an optimized color corrected image that's a seamless part. You know, we talked about integrations and connections and the way that benefits all of us to smooth out the pathways between solutions to solutions so that we all get to concentrate on what it is that we do best. This is one perfect example of smoothing that pathway so that, you know, you don't have to worry about it. You're not creating extra work for your photographers. Those images are uploaded to CaptureLife, and then delivery, guys, can take place to the end consumer, either with photographer intervention in the portal, or if you're a vertical operation or you're working closely with your customers and you have their end consumer delivery information, then you're just sending that up to CaptureLife with the dp2 product, and there it goes. There's a few, I'm just going to summarize steps without getting into the detail. The first step in dp2 would be to use our CaptureLife product that we supply for you, duplicate it, then add your own set of instructions, and we'll help you figure out what those instructions are depending on what your workflow is. Prepay plus green screen, no buy scenario. I'm not going to go through the details of those, but however you guys need it to work, our programmers worked with CaptureLife programmers so that we could pass off the information that you need to make this workflow possible. So the answer really lies in step one, in all the CaptureLife product and the CaptureLife nodes, which really contain the instructions for CaptureLife to do this, deliver this now, or wait on delivery until a photographer touches it. There's one table inside of dp2 on the export taskbar. It's the CaptureLife setup table. You have to have an entry in there. You have to do this communication with CaptureLife to make sure that your account is valid, and you'll get an ID value back for confirmation. If you're working, you know, if you're working with photographers, they will have to have customer credentials inside of their customer table. Or if you're a vertical operation, you basically can skip that step. And then this is cool. I had to have a third step to make three things, right? 1, 2, 3. And then everything happens automatically. The dp2 render engine is what sees the CaptureLife product nodes instructions. So I'm going back to step one. And when the render engine sees those node names, basically, guys, it's all driven by a CaptureLife _ node name. The render engine says, hey, this is a CaptureLife product. This is what I do to it. The render engine creates a worker record, and then a worker has to be running. So I circle the CaptureLife product here too, because that's pretty much the answer to everything. Let me just load this screen. I think this is the last one that I have, guys. I'm showing you a screenshot from within dp2 with all the CaptureLife answers. So depending on the workflow, whether it's a prepaid scenario without the green screen image, with the green screen image, or a no buy scenario, your answers are here. If you're a vertical operation, your answers are here, basically in the bottom part of this menu item that says CaptureLife here, or where it says other node names here. The whole menu is a CaptureLife menu. It's kind of tricky to get to it. You have to pop open a text node and then right click to get to this text node right click menu. You guys have been looking for it, you know, just by right clicking on the node, but it has to be popped open. So just a little tip and trick there. So I'm not going to go through all these overrides with you, but basically in dp2 we have the answers for your workflows that help you upload what you need to CaptureLife and either automatically deliver it to consumers if you're sending along email information and mobile phone number information, or your photographers would get an email. Well, they're going to get an email regardless, actually, from CaptureLife. dp2 does not send it. CaptureLife does a good job of sending photographers notifications that either say, hey, an order was uploaded on your behalf. You have to go to your portal and release it to your customers, do whatever you have to do and release it. Or they'll get a message that says an order has been uploaded on your behalf and your customers, your clients, have been notified. So the good thing, guys, is that automated, streamlined connections have been made. Good things happen automatically. We have a data table. That's what this second bullet is here. I just wanted to mention it. If you're uploading a lot of jobs, a lot of images, we have a data table in dp2 that really serves kind of like a report for you to see what data you're uploading, what went wrong, if anything. So we've basically given you a good tracking table to see what's what on all of your CaptureLife uploads. I mentioned earlier about how important and how much you guys would like to connect to your own print store to drive those print purchases directly back to you guys for fulfillment. So there are options there with your own commerce solution or using Rose Web. And we want you to contact TW at CaptureLife for more information, for one, on getting started. So you'll get started with CaptureLife, and then we'll make sure that we set up a session with you guys on the setup side of things, the dp2 side of things. But before you do that, you would have to be enabled with your CaptureLife account. So many thanks to all of you guys who have gotten started. And again, I mentioned some of you are already using CaptureLife before the integration of dp2. dp2 just gives you that optimized, color corrected, streamlined way of now, merging this workflow directly into and out of your production system. So anything that we can do to help, guys, we're here to help you guys understand the workflow. And any questions that you have, you can type them into the question box. We can address them after this dp2 technical section. We can address them during the open mic section. We can bounce back to you with your answer. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us throughout this webinar, throughout the session, everyone. So I'm going to pass this off to Pat DeLuca for all the other good dp2 stuff that you guys are going to hear about. Thanks, you guys, for your time. Talk to you again soon.
Of course, it helps if I unmute myself. So I think you're going to see my screen. I just have to make sure you're seeing the right part. Yes, I believe so. All right, you should all be seeing my PowerPoint. Somebody tell me if you're seeing it. I want to thank everybody. I'll just reiterate what other folks said. Thank you for joining me today. And are you seeing my screen? Can somebody answer that question for me? Because I don't actually see it. Oh, wait, there
Yes.
we go.
Yes, we are.
You are. Okay, good. So thanks again for spending the time with me. I do want to make one small mention is that I have a cold. So if I put myself on mute, you're not going to see me because once I get started, I'm going to start with PowerPoint, and then I'm going to be working in dp2. So I want to make sure that you get can see as much as clearly as you can when I'm in dp2. So, outside of this, I'm not going to be joining you, but I did want to say hi. It's good. Can't see you, but it's always nice to be able to join you. And before I forget, I'm going to be covering a very wide range of things inside of dp2. So if you have questions, you can kind of hit the question, put them in the pod. Tom Licio is going to be looking at that so that if I want to, if we can stop and answer a question as we go, because I'm going to be touching so many different parts of DP2. If there's a place that you want to stop or you want to go back to, maybe we can do that later, or again, we can always connect offline individually or as a group, however your lab wants to work it. So with that, I'm going to get rid of me, and I'm going to go ahead and there we go. So now hopefully you're seeing full screen of the PowerPoint presentation. I'm using PowerPoint for a couple of different reasons. I'm using it so that I can really go through kind of step by step what you're seeing here. And as I'm doing that, you're gonna see like a long list of what's happening, and I'm gonna promise you that as I go through that, why isn't it advancing? There we go. Whew. Okay. So as I was looking through and trying to figure out how to organize all the different pieces and thinking back over the last year since version 21, and we've had a number of different kind of iterations, 21, 21.1, and so on, I realized that in my mind, it was kind of a season of listening and building on your questions and ideas and the problems that you had, and taking those ideas and looking at, is it a bigger issue? Would more people benefit from us taking a more global look at what was happening and maybe solving the problem for everybody, or being able to offer different solutions for different people? So that's, as I go through these features, a lot of what we've been doing was focusing on making that user experience better. And so some of the things, I know Guy went over it briefly in the very beginning, that some of the things that you're going to see are really about kind of how do we make it happen faster? How do we make this a better experience overall? Listening to what you had to say, and in many cases going back and asking you, hey, how did this work out? Is there something we can do to improve it? So I think overall you're going to find that some of the things that you've struggled with, we really have started to take a look at and try to improve. And I want to encourage you to give us feedback on the things that we're doing and how they're working and what we can do to make them even better. It's a big part of kind of what our focus is, and we meet every day now. So we have an opportunity to really talk about and dialogue and communicate with each other about the types of feedback we're getting and what customers are saying to us. So it's really kind of critical. So these are some of the places I'm going to visit, and I'm going to be visiting them. Some features were small enough that I kind of dovetailed them and tucked them into something else, and I'll try to be really good at identifying this is on the list, and I'll promise you that I won't clean up the list that you're going to see in the PowerPoint, that you'll be able to get that full list and go through, and there's some other things that you're going to see on it. We're going to talk a little bit more about workflows and different ways to go back and forth between tables. I think workflows is one of those places where we're really kind of seeing the potential that was always in the whole concept around workflows, and I know those of you who are using it will be pleased. We've done some things in products, usage, and aging data that I'm going to take a look at. We've got some new controls in the print queue and job queue controls that I think will be powerful tools when and if you decide to use them. We have a batch order delete, which I know a number of you are going to be happy about. And we have made some overall improvements, and I'll just speak to those briefly now. I'm going to bring them up again, but so in certain tables and thumbnail views, in the ability to navigate through, grid views, we really have gone in and sped up, some cases 10 times, how long it takes to go through those tables. So hopefully when you upgrade to, not if, but when you upgrade to version 22, you will really kind of begin to see that and feel it, and it'll really make the experience of DP2 better. I'm going to go through these slides briefly, and then I'm going to hop into DP2, but I want to, is that not refreshing? Are you guys seeing full screen, or are you seeing, hold on a second, let me just check. Nope, you're seeing it, okay, never mind.
Looks very good, Pat.
Thank you. I know it just didn't refresh on my other monitor. So these are some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. I'm not going to be showing everything that's on the list that you're going to see here, but I will make sure that this list gets to you so that you can see it. So there's some order enhancement, like batch delete orders and opening an order with related images, and those things I am going to go through. I'm going to show you a new 36 pix crop service, an automation there. I'll show you how to select a crop color by user. There's a number of different ways. It's a system setting. There's all kinds of things. There's some things in the digital analyzer. And depending on how much time we have, I may not go into the digital analyzer, but so that you know there's some enhancements that have been made there as well. The order items and jobs, there's a number of different changes that have been made there to make it easier and more flexible to use workflows. There's a node selector, there's some other things. I'm going to look at reports by workflow. I'm not going to go too far into creating reports or editing reports or the email manager, but I am going to highlight those. I'll kind of take a look at those so that you'll at least be able to see where they are and you know, take notes, as Kathy said earlier, and write down your questions if you have them. There's some new things that we did in products. We've got a couple of different special effects features, and I'll kind of go through those, talk a little bit about what special effects are. We have now a whole kind of new system for using trim and crop marks. There have been some enhancements in the composite layout helper, as well as the calendar template tool. I don't know that I'll go through those in detail, but again, we'll get you all the information, and things are being, the help files are being updated and things are being documented in a really timely way. So kudos to Pete for that. There's a bunch of new macros and some other capabilities, and I think Tom's going to address those. So I won't go into those other than to say that the macro assistant has been updated. We have some tools that are product aging tools, finding out when it was last used or frequency, and I'll kind of be showing you what some of those are at a high level. We're going to talk about events. I'm going to kind of do it via the events and email. I'm going to talk about that via the workflow, but just a couple of highlights that I want to make sure you guys remember are included here in my list. Such as being able to use subject info data. We're going to talk a little bit about workers, just insofar as I need them to do a couple of other things. But I do want to mention that workers, when you close all, it no longer closes and shuts down your open workers. So that'll be a relief, I know, to several of you. So print queues, we've added capability in the print queue to be able to keep the jobs in the job queue. So if you're a lab that wants to be able to hang on to those jobs temporarily so that if you need to kind of go back and rerun something, it's in the job queue. We have a process for doing that now, which I'm going to show you. We also, this is kind of where, talk a little bit about those speed improvements, right? Faster display for order images, order items, and products. And this is really a good example of a place where it started out with one. Wouldn't it be great if, you know, takes a long time for this to refresh. So in going through that, the developers really looked at, well, where are the other places where this might be an issue? You know, let's take a broader view of the amount of time it takes to query a table or to display something. So another example of that is a warning that says opening up that large number of records, what the potential time and memory usage is, and so on. And then just a couple of the database pieces. The roll and frame values are up to approximately 220 characters. It's somewhat operationally dependent. But you're going to find that if you want to do it, we're a little bit more graceful, maybe a lot more graceful, I guess, depending on your point of view, on our ability to handle the types of things that you're doing. You know, depending on what your system is, how your system is set up, or where that kind of technology, you know, where you need to apply it. So this is actually something I'm going to come back to. So I'm actually now what I'm going to do is go to dp2, and I'm going to just kind of start in dp2. I'm going to also welcome my colleagues, my fellow organizers and panelists. If I miss something or forget something, I have my list and I'm going to try to go through it in the most orderly fashion I can. But if I miss something, please don't hesitate to jump in and say, hey, here's one other facet about this. And if you have questions, of course, don't hesitate to ask them. So now in dp2, I did open up my order data table. I thought about just, going, and I know I do that a lot when I'm in the classroom. I have a tendency to start, blank canvas. But what I want to start with is, and I'm going to follow my list and try to stay really organized about how this is going to work. The first thing that I had on my list, and one of the first things I want to show you, and I know this has been a challenge for many labs, is I have 300,000 orders in my order data table, and I need to delete them. And holy cow, if I have that many orders previous to this, you could select a bunch of orders and try to delete them, but of course it's processor, it kind of chews up all your what's happening right there in the UI. So what we needed to do is create a way to batch delete, so that it's happening in the background. It's not, chewing up all of your, your resources as it used to do. So what I'm going to just select a group of orders, and obviously I'm not going to select a huge amount of orders, but I just want to give you a sense of what that is. And I actually could just start from here, and I could go ahead and we now have the capability here to batch delete selected orders is what we're going to see. And I'm just going to select that. Now, what we have is actually an interface to do this with. And it not only allows you to select the orders, but also select what you want to optionally delete, so that you can delete the image files, raw image files, KPAR's original images, and order item job files. So it's going to allow you to do that. It's going to allow you to select the worker. This happens on the worker. And I'm not going to run the worker so that you all get to watch this, but I can just queue the orders for deletion, and I've got 12. And then when I flip on my worker, of course, then they'll go happily on their way, and dp2 will delete everything in the background. So that's kind of number one, and I think for a lot of you that have struggled with this in the past, this is going to be a really nice feature. I'm going to work for most of the rest of what I do, and I do actually want to mention too as well, order data table is another place where we've seen speed improvements. This is the grid view as opposed to the thumbnail views that I mentioned earlier, but we've really gone back and kind of tried to take a look at where people are kind of taking the biggest hits, and this is a place that we I think the developers really spent some time trying to figure out the best ways for you guys to benefit from this kind of thinking. Okay, so I'm going to use select order actually to go ahead, and I've got a couple of different orders, but I'm going to start with my KA sample order. I also want to say I'm seeing a little bit of anomaly. I'm just going to tell you that right up front. Some of the windows, some of the things I'm going to do. I want to, and of course I'm using my mouse. I do want to encourage you, and in fact, in the back of this PowerPoint that I have to show you, I'm going to, I listed a bunch of those. I know Kathy had some in her videos, but we have started to really look at shortcuts. So there's like 3 or 4 pages of different shortcuts. So if you struggle with that sometimes, you'll see them there. So a couple of other things that I think have been really kind of powerful ways to do this. And actually, I don't want to be in this order now that I say that. Well, I can be in this order. So a couple of other small features that have been added, which I think pack like a pretty powerful punch. One of those is to open the order with all the related images orders. So, actually, I'm going to do that. I'm going to use my other order for that, because you all know I have other stuff in that order, right? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to actions, and I'm going to open with all related image orders. This was a byproduct of, and I'm sure some of many of you have experienced the same thing. you have that original order, but then there's a lot of reorders depending on what kind of fulfillment you either have for, out to the consumer, what kind of online ordering systems you've implemented. So there might be a lot of reorders associated with that original order. So as you are working through an order, a lot of the time you might want to be able to see all of the images and their reorders associated with that original order. So now we have the capability to actually view them in separate tabs so that you can very kind of easily get that sense of, okay, how big is it? What kind of, what's happening? How many reorders do I have? With only one click. So it's really nice. In addition to that, there's something that you might have noticed is there's now a little count. That's true for both order items. You can see it there. I should have made my pointer like bright red. But you can see now that I have the order item count as well as I have the order images counts for each one. Here's my original order of 65. But each one of these reorders, I have that count of how many images were included in those reorders. So I think from a user standpoint, it's really going to help. I know that I've more than once have I been, working with many of you where we scrolled through and we're like, how many images are in this order? Well, now we're showing you that. It's easily on the display. It's that way by default so that you can really get a sense of what you have in front of you. In addition to that, we've had the ability to, and I'll just, I know again, this is something that Kathy had the shortcut key. I can use a shortcut key, but I also, for those of you who have not been involved in workflows, I can also open the order by workflow so that I can see, in this case, I would come back, but it can see as I'm looking at it in workflow from a different point of view. Now I can see what workflow, in this case, I have a standard prints workflow, I have an 8x10 first workflow, and so on. And there's my my original, and again, it's nice ways to be able to see, because I do want to show you one other thing. As I come in here, if I decide that, in fact, I want to see my work for that particular, I want to see the order items for images, I can come back through, and of course I can take a look at it this way. I can look at it now for order items, and if I do that, I'm going to see in tabs over here the order items for each one of those reorders. So I'll have
Pat, we have a question from one of our participants. How do you connect the order so they know they are related?
So it's going to depend on your system. So that what it does is, and actually you can see that Dave Tillman is one of the organizers. He actually answered it in the pod, but I'll read it out loud. So the question is, how do you connect the orders so they know they are related? And here was his answer. It uses the images order ID and the parent order ID to determine the related orders. So depending again on the system that you're using will determine how those relationships get built. If those relationships, if you wanted to use this manually without somebody creating a reorder in some sort of online fulfillment or online ordering system, you could just create reorders, right? Is there any other way to do that, Dave? I think those are the only two ways.
Yeah, at the current time, yeah, that's all I know of.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Does that answer your question, Ryan? You can raise your hand. I have to find you though. This is
actually we just had another one. We just had another one come in. Pat, is there a way to turn it off?
Reference another in thousands of images and it slows loading time. Ah, that's a good question. Is there a way to turn it off?
Well, you don't have to use that right-click option, so you can just, open the order image like you have all along. So
okay, so I will.
You don't want to use, then you could just avoid the right-click option, I guess.
Yeah. Does that make sense, Ryan? I'll go, and I can go back to that. I'm going to hide the panel for a second, right? So if I just wanted to do this normally, and I double-click, I'm just going to double-click on it because otherwise there's nothing to show you. It would just show up normally. I got to go back and find you now, Ryan. Okay, thank you. Okay, great. All right. So that's kind of before, so that's a good question. Thank you very much. So you can look at it exactly the old way, so to speak. You don't need to use those right-click options. And thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. And thanks for getting the question out to me, Tom, because I didn't see it. Okay. So those are some of the changes that we've made kind of to the order data table. And again, there are some other little things here and there, but I'm not going to try to demonstrate everything. Otherwise, we'll be here all afternoon, and I don't want to get lost. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've implemented in the order images window. And again, I'm going to demonstrate a couple of them. I'm not going to try to demonstrate all of them. The first one that I want to demonstrate is the 36 picks. Excuse me. What we've done is we've added the ability here. So we've tucked 36 picks away a little bit. So 36 picks, you'll now find it under chroma key down here at the bottom. And you'll notice that we now have a new option that says when we send selected images to 36 picks, we have now the option to include the crop. So we have the same options that we've always had, but now we can do knockout and we can do crop, or either one or both, right? And then send it. Now this is I'm having a little bit of trouble with this window today, and I'm pretty sure that this is a byproduct of some of the things that are happening with GoToMeeting. And then I get an, are you sure you want to send the selected image to 36 picks? And of course I say yes, and it queues it up. The 36 picks, for those of you who, just as a little bit of a reminder, I'm not going to try to change anything here. You'll need to close this window. But if you go to categories and you go to export, that's where you find that input output for 36 picks. And again, it would just, everything else would run pretty much as normal. The crops that came in through 36 picks could overwrite existing dp2 crops, right? It's just the crops in the dp2 table are just entries in the database. So, those entries are going to be made as a function of the service that you're using in 36 picks rather than as a function of something that you've done in dp2 or elsewhere in your system. I just kind of wanted to kind of give you a sense of that. A couple of other things that got added to the order images data table is our ability to now pick the color of the crop. So if I wanted to set the color of the crop, it's going to bring up a color picker, and I'll make it a bright color, and I'll say okay. And I'm just going to kind of show it to you overall, right? So now if I were to draw a crop, I have that same bright blue color. If I wanted to show crops here, I would see that same color. And again, you'll be able to see the crops for all of the different images in that color. If I want to, be able to set it at a number of different levels, I can come over here to crop, head alignment, and settings. So now I can either set it at the system level, I can set it for a workstation, or I can set it based on a user. And so kind of as an administrator, you can make that choice, or you can let the users do what I just did from that right-click menu, or again, set it for everybody on the same workstation. And it can be changed as quickly and easily as you just watch me change it. There's nothing, different in terms of, kind of if you do one thing, will it lock somebody else out? If you create a system setting and if you have admin privileges, right, you'd be able to do that and go in here, and it would be, that selection would be made here in the system setting data table. Okay, so, all right, so a couple of other things that I want to just kind of talk about here, and I showed it briefly, but I'll kind of mention it again, and that is my ability to, in my view data, I now, if this is something that, again, if your lab uses workflow and you want to be able to use workflow, you can go ahead and I can look at those images from within that workflow. So I had a selected image and I wanted to see that order item by workflow. I can do that from the order images table. I know that in the past we've been able to look at the images from the order items. right? So as I'm looking at view data, I can look at it, I can use the subject info, I can view order item images, I can view the order items and so on. And I have all of these, again, these options here. So I can go ahead and take a look at all of the different images and pieces of data that dp2 it understands and is using as we make different production decisions. Okay. One other small thing, and I'm going to just mention it because it is on your list, and this is something that I know different labs have, they might be operating from select order, and what they'll do is they'll come in here from select order and they'll export images, and maybe they don't want this to go away. They want to be able to then open up another order and then also use export images. So it'll open up a second one so that you'll be able to operate, from within multiple orders and have, instead of, opening up or replacing what's in a window, you'll be able to close that window. Okay. Okay, so order items and jobs. This is kind of my next place to go, and I'm gonna actually open up the order data for this one. And if I could find images, hello. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about what we've done with workflow in order items. And I think this is, I think workflow has this great potential, and I think a lot of you do too. And so we've done some things with workflow, added some capability that I'm going to start from the top and I'll work my way down. So now from the order data table, I talked a little bit about, our ability to open it by workflow and look at workflow. But in the past, the only way that we could really manage our workflow, of course, was to be able to go in and take a look, and they existed in the product table, whatever they were, and we could type them in here. Well, now we have the ability to actually take a look at workflows. So workflows now has a table. And there's a lot of functionality built into this table, that I want to talk about, and I'm going to kind of talk about as we go. I wanted to first say, now we have a table. Within order items, I'm going to close it for now. You'll notice we've always had the ability in the products, right, to use, ways to group and look for products and search for a specific product. But now in order items, you'll notice we have that same little green arrow capability, but we have the ability now to use that to take a look at the workflows, or to take a look at something within a workflow that, so if we can just use this as a way to kind of look at what we have and how many products or how many order items we have in a specific workflow. So it's a really nice way to be able to look at, what was ordered and how it's organized, and do it in a really kind of quick, streamlined way. Or all order items, again, just like we looked at before. So, I think this is one of those places where, those of you that use workflows today are going to really kind of, it's much quicker, much faster to respond, and you can definitely begin to organize it. So that said, let's go ahead and let's take a look at that table. So a couple of things about workflows that you're going to probably notice right off the bat when you're looking at this table. And yes, you can add them, you can delete them, you can save them. You'll get some warnings, right? We're not going to prevent you from doing things like we might in other places. So if you delete a workflow, it's not going to say there's products associated with it. There's a couple of warnings, and I'm going to show you that. So as an example, if I wanted to delete this workflow and I just delete it, it's going to say, deleting it removes all occurrences of the workflow. It's not going to delete anything associated with the workflow, but it's going to say this workflow goes away, and these are the tables where potentially you might want, or you might have that data in there. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes, right? And it'll just delete the workflow. So we've got a couple of some data around in here, and this is well documented in the help. So I'm going to skip around a little bit. I'm not going to do particularly create anything, but I want to walk you through what's here. So the first thing is the workstation instance. And as you can see, it's not critical, might be critical for some of the other things that I'm about to talk about. But we do now have integrated workflow reports. We also have the ability to email them. And I'm going to kind of go through a little bit. The first time that you load version 22, dp2 is going to go in and it's going to look for existing workflows and add them to the table. But if for some reason you need to, you can go ahead and load the workflows using this button. I've already got them loaded. So I think it's going to just tell me that I've already got them loaded. Yep. But I'm going to I want to go through and talk a little bit about the reports and the email templates and the email manager. So if you are familiar at all with the events in the email manager, I'm going to just go ahead and open up the event manager. So one of the things that you can do now having this capability with workflows, and I actually think this one's kind of, there's a lot of really, there's the potential I think for you guys to use this in your labs is pretty keen. And I know those of you who asked for this in the first place, I'm hoping that, you know, if this is everything that you've needed, great. If not, that you'll get back to us and you'll help us tweak it and make it even better. So you can create events. And in this case, I have, you know, I wanted to just give you an example. So I created an event and I'm going to do one, I'm going to create one more so I can kind of just go through the process. If you're not familiar with how the event manager works, then please, you know, come back to us and we can do one-on-one training. We can kind of talk you through some of the steps in terms of, you know, how this piece of it works, because I'm not going to go in depth in how the event manager works. But you can, you know, create triggers and other things so that, you know, based on something coming into the lab, maybe workflow reports are automatically generated and they can be automatically sent to the right workstation with and use the default printer to print them out. All of that thought about how to automate this is built in to the process. So we want to make sure that if you're not familiar with it, that you can get familiar with it. Now in this one, the one that my example here, I just went ahead and I had kind of all of my workflows are in here. But if you wanted to create a new one, right, and you know you're I just created it, say the event ID was workflow reports, but again you can see we have all of these different options. Workflow reports been added to that. You know, I'm only going through this for those of you who haven't used this yet, so you get a sense of it really is pretty straightforward. You know, it's order based. What queue do you want to use, right? This events use workers, and I'll just kind of reinforce that. I'm going to just add an action to this before I save it. And now in the order related actions, in the order emails, or so in order emails, we have the order workflow. Now I have some already set up, or I can use the workflow default email. And I'm going to select this one only so that it can kind of point this out to everybody. And that is that when you select to use the default, you can set this up so that you decide which one is the default, right? So in this case, I'm going to say this is my default. There's a little bit more to it than that, but I think, you know, that this will give you a sense of what happens. And there's other layers that you can add to this and other kind of sophisticated little pieces that you can, you know, dials that you can set, so to speak. Oh, because I had two. Sorry about that. There we go. I had two the same name. So we just want to give you a sense that you can use this in a pretty fluid way. And I think it makes a lot of sense for those labs, especially for those labs that are trying to have current workflows where they're trying to go either paperless, right? Because the report doesn't have to be printed. It can show up on somebody's desktop. There's all kinds of ways to do it. Or it can be printed if it needs to go in a job bag and be part of a ticket, you know, things that travel with the job through the lab. So there's a number of different ways to use it. The other place that I do want to talk about is, of course, the email. And I'm going to just open up the email briefly. There's a couple of other things that I want to, you know, kind of bring to light here. I know I mentioned at one point that, or it was on my list, I might not have actually said it out loud, that we now have the capability to create email through the subject info data table. So you're going to see that on many, if you're not on a later version of 21, and certainly you're not on 22 yet, a number of options now exist in terms of macro categories for doing emails. Amongst those is subject info. So for those of you who have, excuse me, who haven't taken the time to upgrade, but we're asking about subject info, because I know that there are other workflows in not just dp2, but in your labs that need to be able to access email addresses either from subject info or from other parts of the software. We do now have that built into the email template. So I kind of wanted to just point that out, you know, kind of how this it's really set up to be a full kind of and robust piece that's been added to dp2. So I think that you're going to, if you're not using it today, it's something to seriously think about. So that's, I'm not going to go too much. Definitely not going to go there. I won't get anything else covered. But so I'm going to pause and see if I have any questions about the way that we've implemented workflows and workflow reports. And actually, I can show you, now that I'm saying that, why don't I just show you one of those? Because I almost forgot. You're going to see that we have a new category called workflow order reports. And I'll just show the simple one. And again, which workflow do I want to show? And I know that now I'm having that same problem with my screen. And there you go. Hopefully this won't. So it'll give me an order. And these, again, they're fully customizable. You can go in and use the HTML editor to make these exactly what you need them to be to display the right type of information that you're trying to get, either, you know, to the people in your lab or however you're trying to use it. This is the simple one, and again, these are the default ones. One word of caution, right? If you're going to use the sample ones, you're going to want to rename them and use your own, because these, if we, you know, if the development team has a need to change these, yours will get overwritten if the name stays the same. So that is kind of a summary of kind of how we've implemented workflow. You can also see down here in the products window that we've got from the products, this is my last little piece, I think, for workflow, that we can look at which products are part of the individual workflows. I can go in and I can look at, you know, the different ones from the different categories and really get a good idea of, you know, if I'm looking for something or I'm trying to work, you know, and I need to find a particular product, or I want to work with a particular product inside a workflow, I can also search it from there. Okay.
No new questions, Pat, in the question box, but I want to encourage everyone on the line to reach out and ask a question if you have one on workflow.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Okay, so which order am I in? I'm in the KA sample order. So while I'm here, I'm going to go back to all categories. Uh-oh. Did you ever screen refresh? There we go. Looks like it took you guys a couple extra seconds to come with me. So a couple of different things that have been added to the product workflows. And I'm going to start with a couple of special effects. So the special effects, these are two new product features. And the way that they were implemented is through special effects, and I'm going to show you those. I think I have them in this order. Let's see if I put them in this order. I hope I did. And good, I did. So these two different special effects were implemented not as full-blown, you know, right-click product features. They're not on the image node properties in that way, but they are implemented as special effects. And I'm going to kind of go through what I mean when I say that. So the first one of those is what we call the radical blur. And what the radical blur does is it allows you to, and this is a response to a request. When we had a product feature request, this is a response to that request. And to some extent, what we want to do is get other feedback from the labs and you guys that are on the line to say, hey, you know, what do you think? Is there other things that we can do with this? You know, this is an approach that we've taken. So feedback on these kinds of things is welcome, and we're kind of looking for it. So the essence of what this does is this says, take an image, which the image is in this node, and I'm going to show you this in the image node properties as well as in view as text, so I can kind of show you how this works. It says take this image and then apply what we're calling radical blur and paste that image kind of basically into, in this case, it's a text node, and I'm going to go, it's an image node, sorry, and I'm going to open up the image node properties so I don't lose my way here. So if you look at the properties of the node 10,000, which is, it's, you know, in this particular case, you could think of it as the background node. It is not technically the background node. But what you can see down here is down here in the effects portion of the image node properties, it says radical blur except nodes. And so what I've done is I have applied the radical blur, and I've told it except for don't do that in node 10,001. So what's happening is we're able to see very clearly Shirley's face, and I'm actually going to change. So if I made this 100, hopefully I won't type the wrong thing here. There we go. And let's preview it. Right, so you can see she's coming a little bit more into focus. This was in response to some labs saying, hey, we want to even make parts of this more blurry than what you're allowing us to do when you're using it in other ways. So what this is essentially doing is saying, okay, for this section of it, right, for the section of it that's represented by node 10,001, go ahead and make that the clear part of the image. That was not a good explanation, and I'm sorry about that. So, but this is where we implement special effects. And I want to show you this as view as text because, and Tom and I had this conversation this week about what's the best way to do this. Because the way that this is done is that, and let's see if I can bring this over here. Are you guys seeing that? There we go. Okay. Oh, look, I have an extra colon in there. Uh-oh. Or extra semicolon. So what I did here, or what Tom helped me understand I needed to do here, was I added the include statement for the special effects.txt file, which is in the macros folder, in your scripts folder, and I'll show you that in a second, because the other one is a similar, the code that we need in order to be able to use this is in that special effect image effects.txt file. So I'm just within the product itself, I'm saying, yeah, please go ahead and use that rather than having to turn something on at a system setting. So that not only is it going to read macros.txt, but it's going to read special effects, special image effects.txt. So it kind of keeps this neat and tidy within the product itself. And there's a few other things that we've done that way. But I just want to kind of give you a sense of how this works. So you have, you know, this can work on, you know, the relationship, works on the relationship between the node where I've put in the special effect and the node that I've specified where I want it to, you know, be clear as opposed to blur. So that's the radical blur feature. I'm going to go ahead and, oh, I promised to show you that. Hold on a second. I believe I have that open here somewhere. Okay, here it is. You're seeing that? There we go. Okay. So in your KPDP2 folder scripts macros, you have a special image effects.txt file, and that's the one I'm referencing. And my ability to do the radical blur and the glow, which I'm about to show you, is built into that. So all I needed to do is reference it in the product. And so the same is true for my glow. The glow is a very different effect. And I won't go into like too much depth about how this all works. I have a couple of order items that I'm going to open up and show you what it looks like. But essentially what's happening here is we are adding what we call glow, and this set of parameters, right? And you can see it, right? Calls to, this is just for what effect does, right? But what it's doing here is it's allowing me to not just set the color of the glow, the transparency or opacity of the glow, you know, how quickly the glow falls off, right? You know, where it's solid and then it falls off, you know, as it fades out, but also an offset. That very first number is an offset from the image node, so that you'll be able to, and let's see if I can get this to work that way, so that, let me see if I can show no boxes, turn that off, so that you can actually move that glow. So if you had a stroke or a border or something else around that image node and you wanted to offset that, that glow, you know, away from the image node, you have the ability now, one of the parameters, and this is explained in the, I think this is explained in the help files. If it's not, it will be, as I say that out loud. But it's one of the, it actually does work on some of the shadow logic, but if you'll notice, oops, that won't work. There we go. We have it on all four sides of the image node. And again, you can do this on as many image nodes as you want to in the product. And it will give you that nice four-sided glow. I know a lot of you have struggled with having to do this in Photoshop for a very long time. And you can change the color of it, but I'll show you in my product. I have a couple of examples here. I made the glow as white in this case. Oh, it's taking a long time for it to render for you guys. There you go. I don't know if I'm going to dare bring this up bigger, but yeah, I'm gonna. Why not live dangerously, right? So you can change the color of it. You can change any of the other attributes, and all within the parameters of the image node properties here. You know, down here on the effects. And I'll, if it's not documented, I'll make sure it is. I'm pretty sure it is though. Excuse me. Thank you for, again, I apologize for the voice and for needing to take drinks of water. Okay, so those are the two new special effects product features that we've implemented for the version 22. Now, the next thing that I do want to show you, and I'm going to leave the image node properties open. I'm going to open up, in this case, just kind of a basic product, and I'll grab you know, a standard print product. I think I have a unit product here. I can just use that.
Pat, before you move on, we've got another question.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Tom.
Is it possible to add more than one effect onto a single node?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that question. I want to say I can't imagine why not, but Tom, I'm going to ask you if that's true.
Yeah, let's reach out to the development team.
Yeah, the answer would be yes.
Okay.
So if you look at one of those effects, they're essentially just little subroutine calls.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, I'll bring one up.
So if you had one, and at the end of it, if you put a little semicolon and then you put the next one,
Okay.
you could chain them together. And now some of them may or may not make sense together.
Right, right.
But now we put both of these things in, add glow and the radical blur, as special imaging effects, because we weren't really sure whether people were going to use them, whether a large number of labs were going to use them. If it turns out there's great interest in these, then we would probably just turn these into regular keywords, and you know, have some place here in the image node properties to set all the properties. So we at least got the ability to do it in there, but if it turns out to be something really popular, I think we probably would move it out of special imaging effects and make it a regular keyword.
Thanks. I think I forgot to say that. Appreciate it. Okay. So do I want to save those changes? Maybe not, since I wasn't paying that much attention when I made those changes, right? The next thing that I want to show you on image node properties, since I have it open, and it looks like you're a couple of seconds behind me, so I'm going to go back to trying to pay a little bit more attention to what's happening there. I'm going to just open up. I'm not really concerned about the product because there's a couple of things that I just want to show you. I'm going to draw a smaller node inside of this one and just create an image node. so that I have Shirley. We've implemented, we always had on the coords, well, so we've had the capability on the coordinates tab. And I think this was a system setting in order to be able to show crop marks. But we never really had any capability for doing anything with those crop marks. So one of the things that we've added is the ability to really control not just the crop marks, but multiple crop marks. The crop marks are based on, and in this case it says trim, right? It's differentiated from our old crop marks. The ability to control not just what size they are, what position they're in, how long they are, what color they are, so that if you're a lab that needs to, you know, be able to use crop marks, and I'm gonna, obviously I'm gonna manipulate these a little bit, but I wanted to kind of show you that I can change the color, right? So if you're a lab that prints things out that need to be, you know, manually trimmed or hand trimmed, or you know, as an example, you can invert these if you need to do them another way, right? You want them to be, again, it all depends on how you're fulfilling them or what you want to do with them. You can change the thickness, you can change the length, right? So I could make them, you know, 1/4 of an inch. And you could tell an 1/8 is pretty big, but I've been just, you know, so that way you can really use the full capabilities, especially if you're a commercial lab and you have, you know, you want to be able to output. You could do these in multiple. One of the examples we had was business cards, you know, laying out of business cards that needed to be hand trimmed, or there was another operation in the lab, really depending on what other kinds of specialty products that you offer. So I just wanted to let you know that this was going to be in here, show you fundamentally how it works. I think for those of you who are using trim marks, that's going to be a really nice added capability, like I'm telling you that. So that's the trim marks, and that's also part of the image node properties, again, because they are at an image node level. Okay. Go ahead and save that. Wait till it clears for you. Okay. So a couple of other things that we've added and our capabilities. I'm going to kind of mention these. I'm not necessarily going to do anything with them, but I do want you to make you aware of them. We've added some functionality to our composites, the new layout helper. So let me just open it. Choose a layout. Okay, so within the composite helper, and if you haven't used the layout helpers or the composite helpers, here's how you get to them. There's a couple of things we've also added, which reminds me, there's something I forgot. I got to go back to it. On the composite layout helper, the ability now to, when you're looking at your nodes, you'll see right in here, we've added some extra capability in terms of the staff row, of being able to keep the staff row the same size as the countable nodes, making them not movable or resizable, or making them so you can resize and change the size. We've added some capability there, so you've got some more flexibility in terms of that. We've also added some flexibility to the calendar templating tool, and I'm not going to dive into that because that's probably a whole nother hour. One of the other things I did want to mention, though, which I neglected to mention earlier, which we just sort of saw, is the ability to, on any product really, but is that ability to, let me just grab another layout here. Is to go ahead and in the layout helpers now, this actually came out of last year's workshop, is the ability to see the nodes. So if you, this is called the node selector. So if you have you have a very complicated layout, it's got a lot of nodes in it. Now you have the same capability, hopefully this looks bigger, but you have the same capability here to look at image or text nodes, custom name nodes, countable nodes, contains macros, doesn't contain macros. So it'll allow you then to also be able to act on them. So we'll look at maybe contains macros, and it'll show you which ones contain the macros, and then when you select them, it'll select them here. If you select it here, it'll select it. I'm going to go to all 1 second. Right, so if you select it here, it'll select it here, so that you'll be able to, in a complex layout, get to that node that you need to get to right away, and be able to you know, get to where you need to go as quickly as possible. So we're thinking that that's, and that was something, was a suggestion actually that came from one of you guys. And as we built on it, and we originally thought, I think we were going to put it in the layout helper in a slightly different way, but this has been really nice because it'll also work, you know, on simple layouts. I have a relatively simple layout right here, but you know, you'll be able to kind of get through and take a look at what's going on. I'll just point out here that we've done a lot of work. I'll reiterate that we've done a lot of work to make sure that our help supports all the new features that we've got. So use those book icons and use that, you know, go in and use the contents and search it, especially because a lot of the features that I'm talking about today, you know, I'm kind of bouncing around. I'm going from, although I did try to make some logical process. But I wanted to just make sure to get, at least cover all the highlights. All right. So I think that's the last product piece that I'm going to actually demonstrate. What I want to do now is talk a little bit more about, and I said Tom's going to cover macros and things like that, I think, in his piece. I want to talk a little bit more about products. We've added the ability to kind of understand things about products that we haven't known in the past. You know, we've always, if you're not using labels and you're not using the, you know, the find, maybe I'll just kind of, right, if you're not using this find, boy, this is the greatest tool, because you can just, you know, I just typed in PDF and I can find, and it's going to find that PDF product in my dp2 basics, which is, and then I have another order item. So if you're not using that find, I strongly encourage you to. And this happened actually the other day. Somebody said, how do I get rid of it? Just hit that little X there. But along some of the things that we've added is this, and it's the last one on the list. It's called aging. But what aging does is it allows me now, because I don't run jobs as routinely as you guys do. It's going to allow me to I'm going to have a lot of return, right? You guys might also, I guess, but so it's going to allow me to figure out using a date, right? And you've got the little green arrow, which is going to give you a calendar. So if I want, I'm just going to leave it at maybe June 2nd, 2019, right? But it'll allow me to figure out which ones have never been printed. Right now I'm going to have a slew of them because I don't print all mine, right? I make lots and lots of layouts, but it's going to show me those in the different categories. Which ones haven't been printed, right? Which ones I haven't done anything with, right? It can also, I could do the same thing, and I can also show which ones don't have order items. And what we've added, and I'm going to show you kind of what's been added to this. What's been added is, let's just go to a test layout. Is in the, if you go to edit in the product view, in the table, what we've now added is 3 different last printed, number printed, and updated. And I think traditionally, and Dave, you can correct me if I get this wrong here, but what we've had in the past is we've had some of this information in the order items data table where I've known this order item got printed, we have some status, right? So if I were to look at an order item, gotta go to edit, right? I would have some of that information, right? I would know these have this type of information that we've had, you know, that's been available to us in this table. And some of that's used when you go to an order item and you want to view that kind of data, right? You might view you know, table is, gotta think about this. So you view items that, you know, have been printed, have not been printed. So although that data was resident in the order item, we hadn't before this really had the ability to be able to understand it as a function of the product. So this is the first step in the process. We're starting to think about that. We've had a lot of queries from labs that have said, hey, how do I know what products are old? How do I know which products are outdated? How do I know which products I haven't used in however many? So we've given you the capability here to not only use the date, but to figure out which ones haven't been printed, which ones have no order items, and begin to develop that an understanding of, you know, where products are by category. So that as you go through, maybe you want to clean up some of the products that you have, you know, in your lab, where you want to know which ones are outdated. You have kind of the capability to be able to do that. And okay. Right. Okay. So I think I'm going to pause, see if there's, oh, I see there's a question. Wait, hang on a second. Or did I just not answer it? Oh, okay. Glow should definitely be a keyword. Okay, Tom, did you see that? Okay, somebody else did. All right.
I did.
Okay, good, thanks. So will the products older than work if the order that printed the product has since been deleted? Is the product printed information kept with the job, or does it persist if the job is deleted? I think the answer is yes, but Dave, am I wrong about that?
So this will be a Tom question.
Oh, sorry, Tom.
Yeah, in fact, you just explained it, that you showed us some fields in the products table
Okay.
where we're keeping track of last printed, how many times printed. So this specifically looks at information in the products table. So you could have no order items and we would still know, you know, which products. We would have still kept track of all the information about the product. If you delete the product, obviously we're going to lose the data, but it's not order item related, it's product related. By the way, Pat, I notice you're next to older than where you can't see the whole date. I think you have your fonts enlarged, maybe 100.
Yeah, there's something, yeah, you know, there's something wonky, I know it.
Because I know that you should see
yeah.
the whole date there. I think everybody in the lab will see the whole date. And also that other window that you brought up that you had to stretch should normally be totally visible.
Yeah, did I fail to mention that? I thought I meant to. That's not been something that I've seen up until very recently. But I am very recently doing some testing on working in DP2 and dual monitors. So I've experimented a lot with my settings. I should have just said that up front.
One other quickie while I've already interrupted you. A couple times
sure.
you mentioned that I'm going to cover macros in my presentation.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Oh, shoot.
So I didn't know if you had anything special you wanted to mention, but
no, I was just going to make a list, but I'll put it in the PowerPoint. I was going to, I was going to make a list of the new macros that you'd added to the macro assistant.
Yeah.
But I'll.
Tom, while you're on the line, we have another question. It's almost like a feature suggestion about a favorites category. Do you want to give a quick read and any comments to that?
Yeah, so first of all, obviously you could make a category called favorites, but that may not be what you want because you want the product to be in more than one category. Actually, as I read towards the bottom, I kind of see the same thing. But we have something else where you don't have to duplicate the product and put it in more than one place or anything. We have this thing called labels. It's been in there a long time. If you go to that green arrow.
Yep. Hang on a second.
Yeah, close that. And you go back to the main menu. No.
Hey.
Back to the main menu.
Sorry. Happy
that
clicking.
one on top, labels, that lets you create actually a hierarchical structure if you want, or it can be one level deep, whatever you want to do. But so here you can drag a product into a label, and you're not duplicating the product. You're just adding that label to it. So later on, if you want to get back to, so you could create a label called favorites, and you could drag a product from any category or any number of products from any number of categories in there, and they would all be your favorites. That's a feature that's been in there a long time. Probably a good 10 years.
Yeah, we probably haven't covered it in quite a while though.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's a little, maybe we could do a little video after that, because labels is, yeah, all of these, they're not, I don't want to call them categories in this case, but all of these, the links here are really helpful in being able to search through vast numbers of products, and especially for your labs that have like hundreds and hundreds of different products and thousands, and you're trying to look at, it shows you not just, in this case it's packages, but not just the packages, but what categories those packages are in. And that's what Labels was designed to do, was that ability to create a new label, right? So if we called it favorites, oh gosh, I can't see it to spell it. But I can add a new one, and then I could add a child, right? So if it was packages, I could add, well, I screwed that up, but sorry about that. Does that help, Dave? Oops, oh, you're welcome. Okay.
No new questions in the
All right,
question
good.
box,
So then,
Pat, so we can move on.
Okay, so I only have a few more minutes left, I think, right? I want to go back to my PowerPoint. That's if I can figure out how to get there from here. And
About 15 minutes or so, Pat, if just from a time check, 15 to 20.
so hopefully you are. So I want to talk a little bit about SQL and database upgrades. And I'm hoping that Joe is on the line somewhere, so Joe can, well, any one of you guys, Dave, Tom, Joe, whoever, right? Brian, whoever wants to. One of the things that we saw a lot this year was labs that were trying to upgrade SQL and make, upgrade databases, and, implement new hard drives and new systems where they had to move dp2, or, they needed to kind of really, I think we're all doing it, right? We're taking a look at where are we at and trying to economize and make things more efficient, and take some pretty powerful steps to be able to have our systems, work the best that they can work. So Joe Cooper, I don't know how many of you encountered Joe yet, but Joe is part of our team, and he's doing a lot to work with labs to help them in their SQL. And one of the things as I was preparing to do this that Joe said to me, he says, there were a lot of back and forth about, well, what's the best way to do this? Is there a best practice? And it boiled down to a few simple things, which I'm going to kind of read, and I'll talk a little bit about why this is in here. But one of the things that he said to me is that depending on what's going on with the lab, depending on what they're trying to do, and I think those of you that are experienced in this area will probably agree, is for every time that he has to help a lab and there's something that he does, he kind of customizes the instructions that he sends. And some of that's based on this, and I'll go through this a little bit and kind of talk to some of this. And if, Joe, there's something you want to add, don't hesitate to jump in. If there's something that some very experienced folks in the labs that you want to add, raise your hand and I'll let you jump in too. So the first one is, rule number one is back up, and back up again. I think the most catastrophic things we've seen have been labs that have either gotten into trouble, which of course happens, right? It's not a perfect world. But labs that get involved in this process and then don't have a good backup. They don't even, they don't have a plan for what are they going to do if there's some sort of catastrophic failure somewhere. They haven't, planned up this step. So it's not just backing up dp2, it's backing up those files. It's understanding, what you've got going in SQL. It's understanding what your Windows settings looks like. I mean, it's this huge, every piece and part of how you have this put together could potentially be a player in your relative success or failure at doing a major upgrade. So, because it's really, a lot of times, it's not just about being able to upgrade dp2. That can be a whole nother aspect of it, right? Because when we're talking about the databases and SQL and Windows, that's one thing. But when we're talking about dp2 and all of the files and folders that could potentially be involved in where you might have job files or image files, and depending on how well organized you are. I mean, it'd be great if we were all really good at our due diligence, but we're not, myself included. So it's just a reminder that if you need to do it, you're going to really want to think about where everything is and how you've got it backed up and what steps you would need to take for any kind of catastrophic failure. So the next rule is the version of SQL you start with is as important as the one you want to install. Sometimes it's not possible to go from a really old version to the newest version. There might be intermediate steps. It's important to understand the capabilities in the version that you're in as opposed to the capabilities in the version that you want to go to. I think that it's really important to have somebody available to you who knows this, the right type of administrator, the right type of IT support, the right type of database support. All of those things are players. And, it could be that you might have somebody who goes, no, you're all squared away. You have all the right things in the right places, but it's really helpful to know that before you go in because this is a migration. So the next one is best performance. This dp2 statement, this isn't a statement about the world, is on Windows Server 2012, R2, Server 16, or Server 2019. That's to get the best performance, reliability, and scalability enhancements for a busy lab workflow. Then rule number 4 is to plan, and continue to plan. I mean, really do your homework. Know what it is that you're going to need to do and how you're going to get it done and what's going to happen in your lab while you're doing it. If you don't have in-house IT specialties, then somebody who's kind of intimately familiar with the ecosystem of your specific lab or somebody that you can get familiar. Minimizing your server downtime. It's recommended that you adhere to planning each stage. What are your fail-safe mechanisms? How do you recover, depending again on where you are in the process. And rule number 5 is don't hesitate to ask, right? We're here. We do continually try to, maintain that expertise and kind of keep current with what's going on. And we do test and retest and fail and succeed here as well. So we want you to know that we're here and you can get to us easily through Service Desk. I'm going to do one more plug for training. I got one more slide, and there are 2 documents. These are the things that we were talking about that get updated. And these are just 2 examples. One is from 2008 and the other one's from 2000. But these are the kinds of things that will support you from what we can do to help support you from this end, should you need to, ask for our help. And again, of course, we want you to. So with that, I'm going to pause again. I've got to find you as a meeting. There we go. See if there are any more questions before I kind of hand off to Pete, who's going to talk about, right, I have that right, don't I, Pete? Who's going to talk about Service and Service Desk and some of the other tools that we have kind of deployed on your behalf.
So Pat, we do have a question that came in.
Okay.
It's rare, but Microsoft does depreciate SQL language features. Do you anticipate any breaking SQL changes in newer versions of the SQL server?
Oh, that's not a question I can answer.
Well, let's open it up to the team.
Yeah, I'd say none that we know of currently. I mean, Joe has done some testing, I think, on the most latest versions of SQL Server, and we haven't run into anything.
Does that answer your question?
The other thing to keep in mind is that we kind of designed dp2 to work with any database manager. And because of that, we couldn't use lots and lots of special features in the database managers because a different database manager may not have that feature. A good example is I think a couple labs are still using Oracle instead of SQL Server. And of course, we ran with Jet. But I think it's highly unlikely that the part that we're using will ever be deprecated.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Kevin? Okay, all right, good.
Yes, it does. Super. No other questions in the question box at this time, Pat?
All righty. Well, thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate your support from everybody else.